The hidden history behind fairy tales. When we think of fairy tales, we imagine magical stories with princes, princesses, and happy endings. But what few people know is that the original versions of these tales were far from innocent. Long before being softened by Disney or adapted for children, these stories carried dark, violent, and sometimes disturbing elements. Fairy tales were actually cautionary narratives, used to scare children and warn them about the dangers of the real world. Many included themes of betrayal, murder, cannibalism, and revenge, reflecting the fears and harsh morality of the time. In today's video, we'll uncover the hidden stories behind the fairy tales you thought you knew. Get ready to discover the grim fates of famous characters and the horrors left out of modern versions. If you enjoy dark stories and ancient mysteries, stay with us until the end. But be careful, after hearing these versions, you might never see fairy tales the same way again. Cinderella, a bloody ending. The modern version of Cinderella tells of a kind young woman who, with the help of a fairy godmother, wins the love of a prince and lives happily ever after. But in the Brothers Grimm version, the ending is far more sinister. In the original story, when the prince searches for the owner of the glass slipper, Cinderella's stepsisters go to gruesome lengths to deceive him. One cuts off her toes, while the other slices her heel to fit the shoe. However, their blood betrays the lie. Their fate is even crueler. At Cinderella's wedding to the prince, pigeons peck out both stepsisters' eyes, leaving them blind as punishment for their envy and cruelty. This version does not soften the consequences of human actions and delivers a brutal moral. Evil will be punished mercilessly. It was a way to teach lessons of honesty and humility through fear. Like many other Grimm tales, this story was rewritten countless times to become suitable for children, but its macabre essence remains documented in ancient manuscripts. Little Red Riding Hood, a tale of violence and cannibalism. Little Red Riding Hood is another famous tale that underwent major changes. In the modern version, the girl is saved by a huntsman after the wolf swallows her and her grandmother. But the earlier versions were far more horrific. In the medieval French version, the wolf not only kills the grandmother but dismembers her and serves her flesh and blood to Little Red Riding Hood as a meal. Unaware, the girl eats, while the wolf tries to lure her into bed. In some Italian versions, there's no savior at all. Little Red Riding Hood is devoured, and the story ends there, a grim warning about talking to strangers and wandering alone through the forest. These tales were designed to teach children to fear real dangers of the time: bandits, abusers, and human predators, symbolized by the wolf. The explicit horror was part of their social education. It wasn't until the 19th century that authors like Perrault and the Brothers Grimm softened the grotesque details to make them acceptable for middle-class families. Sleeping Beauty, violence and abuse. In the popular version of Sleeping Beauty, the princess is cursed, pricks her finger, and falls into a deep sleep until awakened by a prince's kiss. But the original tale, Sun, Moon, and Talia, written by Giambattista Basile in the 17th century, is much darker. In this story, Talia falls asleep after a splinter of flax pierces her finger. A wandering king discovers her unconscious body and violates her as she lies helpless. Months later, still asleep, she gives birth to twins. One of the babies sucks the splinter from her finger, awakening Talia. When she learns of what happened, she's horrified. The king's jealous wife tries to kill Talia and the children but meets a gruesome end instead. This medieval tale reflects the brutal view of women in feudal society, seen as property and easy prey for the powerful. The original story offered no justice, only fear. Only centuries later was the story transformed, erasing the abuses and dark family conflicts into the romantic fairy tale we recognize today. Behind stories that now seem harmless are versions filled with violence, horror, and cruelty, created to educate and terrify. Fairy tales were once dark warnings about the dangers of medieval life, where predators, betrayal, and abuse were constant realities. Characters like Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, and Sleeping Beauty faced much darker fates in their original versions, a reflection of a brutal time where fear was society's main form of control. As the centuries passed, these stories were softened, rewritten, and turned into tales of hope and redemption. But their grim origins remain preserved in ancient texts and forgotten manuscripts. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more dark stories like these. And now I want to know, which fairy tale would you like to hear the original dark version of? Leave your suggestion in the comments. It might appear in our next video. Until the next forgotten story.